Evening everybody, welcome back to Chuck's Chats, joined this evening by the wonderful Dr. Tim O'Flanagan, more Bective royalty. We're wheeling them out every week. Tim, as many of you will know, has a long and distinguished career here in Bective, both playing and being the club doctor since I think 1976, you said earlier on, and your father,
yes,
Dr. Sean, before you. So Tim is a good guy to have in. He's going to have a lot of hopefully thoughts and memories to share with us. So Tim, thanks for coming in.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
When did you join, Tim? And what's your background? When did you come in?
I joined in 1973, and the background was that I was in the Royal College of Surgeons doing medicine, and I was playing initially a Macquarie Cup for Mary's in 1970, and we won the Macquarie Cup. And then I went and played soccer for 6 months for Surgeons, and then I started to play rugby for Surgeons. I became captain, and we were playing Hospitals Cup rugby, which was very competitive in those
Very
days.
big back in the day, yeah.
Huge. But on that team was a guy called Jonathan Raphael, and he was a fabulous player. So he had been snared by, believe it or not, Johnny O'Hagan. He'd come to Dublin, met Johnny, and Johnny said, "There's a place for you to stay in Roehampton Road."
Raphael was a doctor, was he? Studying in surgeons?
Studying in surgeons. He's about
English guy,
but not only that, he was captain of the English under-19s and captain of the English under-23s. Went on a full tour to Fiji and Australia, sat on the bench 15 times, never got the full international cap. John Pullen and Wheeler, they were the two hookers, and they were fantastic. But John played here for Bective, played for Leinster, was by far and away the best hooker in Leinster. But then Leinster were told he's not Irish qualified, he can't play for Leinster. So that was the end of his Leinster career. But he then ultimately went back to Northampton.
Played for Northampton, correct,
Northampton was an excellent player. So, but he said to me,
Pullen and Wheeler blocked him.
well, you see, they blocked him.
Pullen was the captain of England. He was the captain in '73 when
He was the
the
guy-
Brits came over here and Scotland and Wales wouldn't come the year before during the
He
Troubles.
said, we may not be very good, but we come.
But at least we turn up.
At least we
Yes,
turn up.
correct, yeah.
That's the thing. But anyway, John got me, because of the Hospitals Cup rugby, he said, "Why don't you come down to Bective with me?" And he did. And in those days, he brought maybe 4 or 5 others. There was Sean Nixon, there was Paul Harty, there was Carl Byrne. You know, there's an amazing number of guys who played in the first in Bective who came from Surgeons as a result of John Raphael.
Okay, now your father as well, Dr. Sean, he would have been here?
He would have been, yeah, and he
that?
came really because I was here, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
And that was the connection there. But it's like everything, when you're supporting your son, you're all in, and that was it. So.
Correct. What position did you play, Tim? In the backs?
I played
Across the back line?
10, 12, 15.
You were multifunctional, multi-talented.
Yeah, that's true. Competent in a lot of different places. Yeah.
And what teams were?
Well, I played mostly firsts and seconds, and you get a year or two in the firsts, and then I tell you who was around at the time. He was an excellent player, a very good player, Brendan Murphy.
Brenny.
Yeah,
Kicking machine.
Hate his guts. No, he's very, very good.
A kicking machine.
A kicking machine,
Murphy.
but very quick, and a great lengthy touch kick as well. Lovely fella, and anyway, you couldn't be envious of him. But he was a great player. So there was lots of competition. Tony Steen was around. There was lots of very, very good players. So you know, if you got a place on any position on the team, you were happy.
And achievements, because you're one of the people, Tim, your picture's all over the walls in here, so you've obviously won a good few cups.
Yeah, well, the truth is I played in 12 finals for Bective, and we won 3. But obviously you can remember the 3, they're imprinted. One was in 1981, we won the Metro.
The Metro.
And
that photo's just up there, I think.
Yeah. I won the Macquarie Cup, and I'm trying to remember, but probably one of the best ones was 1991, with the Badger and Jerry Sexton and
Nardo's Nomad.
Nardo, yes.
I was on that too.
Yeah. Well, now there you go. I mean,
the only thing I ever won in Bective, wouldn't win a row, but we won the Fox Cup.
We did win
third
the Fox
Ds
Cup.
We were.
Yeah, the third Ds, and it was highly entertaining. I was working it out. You would ask, one of the questions that you might ask me was, when did I retire? And at that stage I was 38, and Nardo was my inside man, and Nardo did all the running, and I said, that's a good place to run. Go, yeah, you go there, and I'll back
You were guiding him the
I
wide
was
zone,
guiding him around.
widing
Yeah,
him.
that was the thing, yeah.
So you retired in?
Roughly 1991, but I did play after that some Golden Oldies rugby.
Okay.
There was the odd when you'd be asked to play this, that, and the other. And I tell you, who's after me for a long time is Joe Osborne.
Yeah, to come back play for the Vets.
Yeah, for the Vets, you see. But I had enough common sense to say I do more damage than I do good, so I said I never actually did.
But we still see you doing your
my laps,
morning runs, your laps around the back pitch, even to this day.
And funnily enough, that brings me to, I see a lot of guys now who actually played rugby now back coaching, and you can help me here, but I obviously see Paul Hatton, I see the Silver Fox, or what do you call him, Richie Mabry.
Richie Mabry, is running the whole minis.
And with Richie is the second row guy, but I keep getting his name mixed. Anyway, I see 4 or 5 guys who played rugby now back doing, and that's great in my eyes.
Actually, it was a bit like I'm reminded of Michael Corleone's Al Pacino's character in The Godfather, and he comes up with that beautiful quote, just when you think you've got out, they drag you back in. And I think it's very applicable to Bective.
Well, it's true.
Because as you move on, you end up having kids, and that brings you back, and you start the whole...
reconnect.
Yeah, and you get straight back in. You talk of the likes of Mabo and Hats who are coming through now with their kids on their second round.
Yeah, it's true, and it's great to see, and it's reinforcing, and it's good for the general body of the club. I mean,
absolutely, keep them coming. We have them here forever. So, did you go into coaching or administration? I mean, I know you were the club doctor. You're the club doctor here for forever.
In 2001. Who do you call him? Henrik Kruger. Was playing for Bective. He was from South Africa. He was a very good player. He was the first cousin, believe it or not, of Nas Botha, who was a very famous out half for South Africa.
You know the famous Nas Botha story? He's sitting in a plane, and this guy is chatting away to him, and they're having great conversation. And as they get to leave the plane, Nas turns to him and says, "Who are you?" And he goes, "I'm your first centre." Right? Because Nas just kicked the ball, never passed in his life.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I could digress and tell you what happened at this is totally other, but I had a match there the other day against England, and my daughter-in-law went into the hospitality but didn't come back. Anyway, as I'm wont to do, I was giving commentary on the match. A fella tapped me on the shoulder. He says, "I thoroughly agree with you." Anyway, I started chatting to him. I said, "Tim O'Flanagan is my name. Michael Kiernan is my name."
Kick Kiernan.
Yeah, and I said, it's the drop goal in 1985. He said, yeah. Lovely man, had a great conversation.
He was a great messer. He was a friend of my brother back in the day.
And kissing one another during the middle of the match.
Yeah. Mick Kiernan was a good messer.
He's a nice man.
Okay, so you gave back to the club in terms of using your profession, which is...
Right, well, I got asked in 2001, would I like to go to Chile for the Under-19s World Cup as the Irish doctor. And I said no. And then my 2 kids in particular, Barry and Stuart, said, "You're mad, Dad, you're mad, go on." So I changed my mind and went, and it was great. And
did Heinrich get you on that?
Yeah, that was the start of it, you see. And then funnily enough, and the reason was that Bill Mulcahy, who was another great Bective man, he couldn't go. And then
the great Whigs.
I took over from Bill, and from 2001 until 2008, or 9 actually, I was the 19s doctor, but around about 2007 it changed from the 19s and 21s to the under 20s.
Yeah.
So they won the Grand Slam in 2007, I think. Anyway, so it's funny, but that was the connection, and then you'd have to spend an awful lot of time, like 60 days per year, so I really couldn't do that. So
big commitment.
So instead of doing the 20s, I asked could I do the 19s, because that was 1 week around Easter. But you still got to see a lot of the players coming through, and it was very interesting, to see these guys and how they progressed or didn't, as the matter as the case may have turned out. But so I did.
And your boys are carrying this on now, because Barry's doctor for the under 20s, and
luckily enough, Barry's the under 20s doctor for the last 3 years.
And Stuart.
And do you know what? Stuart's now the Irish full team doctor. But it's funny because Barry went through 3 sessions of the Six Nations, and in 15 matches they won 14. and drew one, so he never knew what a loss was like.
You didn't grow up in the 90s when we won 2 home games in the whole decade.
Or even in the early 2000s where, Jesus Christ, we didn't win a game, so it's fascinating. And then Stuart, he was with Leinster, but he's done a full sports medicine thing and got his membership and all sorts of carry on. And spent time, but it's beautiful to see, because through the under-20s, I met a guy in South Africa who turned out to be the chief doctor to the South African team, and he's in Stellenbosch. But he invited me there 2 years ago, and invited Stuart about 10 years ago out for 3 months. And I went out and stayed with him last year, or 2 years ago, when the World Cup was on and Ireland got to the final and lost to France in the final of the.
Did you stay in Stellenbosch?
I did stay in Stellenbosch.
Lovely place. I've been there. Lovely.
Lovely.
Rugby central for South Africa. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So I mean, been very lucky, and that's all. If you like, coming from a chance encounter with Hendrik Kruger in 2000.
It's funny how things turn out like
you never
that.
know.
Look, looking at your obviously your medical and science background, and we kind of used you for that in Bective, but there's been other kind of sports science guys that were in Bective.
Well, let's get back to the very beginning, and I'll tell you what happened was that when I first came to the club, PJ Smith was the captain, and PJ was a prop, but PJ was the very first guy in Ireland really to be hugely, if you like, connected with sports science. And he had a PhD at Northwestern University in America, and then came back in Ireland and set up Thoman College, which ultimately became incorporated into UL. So he was the godfather of, if you like, sports science in Ireland. And he had any number of guys that have come through and are famous since. But PJ, he was a deep thinker, and he's very good in sports psychology as well. And funnily enough, Frankie, who's PJ's brother, would be a fabulous example of a very knowledgeable guy about rugby. Knew an awful lot of the sports science, and would, even in days gone by in the early 2000s or 2010s and all those times, we would have guys who were injured, and I remember one guy, a great player called Ian Dwyer, and we came up with Carlo, fabulous player, and lovely fellow too. And the thing about it was that he had this injury, and we couldn't exercise him, so we came up with this thing of a flotation aid, where you run in water up to your chest, really, and you can exercise the limbs without putting strain on the muscles in the leg.
Sounds like a racehorse.
And
Dwyer was a racehorse. He was a fabulous player.
He was, and that's for sure. And you see, the thing about it was that there were all these things that we were at. Also, I should mention Liam Hennessy, because Liam Hennessy was another guy who actually, I think, initially started out as a pole vaulter, but he went into sports science again, and I think he runs Setanta College, where they do an awful lot of S&C stuff. But he worked with, I'm not sure, was it AC Milan or Inter Milan, and then came back to Ireland, and then worked with Bective, and then went on to work with Ireland, with the IRFU, and he, like when we went to play in Dubai, you'd have to be conscious of the fact that we weigh the players, and for every kilogram of weight loss, you'd have 1.5 litres of water. So it's just to get your hydration right and all sorts of things. But he was hugely influential in that his knowledge was applied to Bective, and Bective, were the better for it.
I remember Liam, Tim. I remember when the AIL started in, I think, 91, I think it was, and Cosy was managing the team, Frankie was coaching it, and we had a kind of pre-season meeting down in the Sandymount Hotel, as it is now. I can't remember what it was called then. The Mount Herbert it was called then, and they wheeled in this guy, Liam Hennessy, who nobody had heard of before, and he gave this presentation which just blew the room apart. And it was like the introduction to sports science, which is now taken for granted because the game is professional, but the game was still amateur back then.
Well, the gas part about all of this is that at the time, Bective was at the cutting edge of all of this stuff.
Correct.
There weren't too many other people. And funny you should mention the Mount Herbert, because I wonder, was a guy called Paul Loughran.
It was his hotel at the time. He was a ranger.
And he played for Bective, and he's a fine player as well. I think he's a schoolboy international.
Correct.
Excellent,
Correct.
And I think he might have played with Jerry Sexton. Around that time, I might be wrong in that, but I have a feeling that
Jerry was schooled international as well.
Yeah, he was in Castleknock.
Yeah, Castleknock. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so you've had a varied career between playing and then going through using your profession as a doctor, both with Bective and with Ireland, and now your boys are continuing it. So you've been here since, I think you said 76?
1973.
73. Yeah. So what changes have you seen? Obviously we were pure amateur back then, and we were cock of the hoop, we were top of the walk. Bective was up there with the Lansdowns, the Marys, the Wanderers as big boys. What changes have you seen over the years?
Well, when you think about it, at one stage we had Kurt McQuilkin's and Noel, and like he was a top class Kiwi coach, and we had a team that went with it, if you know what I mean.
And we had Mike Ruddock before Kurt McQuilkin, who ended up winning he
Six
Nations, won a Grand Slam in 2005 in Wales.
And he was coach here. We had what do you call the guy? Was it Wesley, the Ulster guy who won?
Harry Williams. Won the first Irish team to win the European Cup. It wasn't Heineken back then. In '99. And he brought down a guy called Dave Webb to play from Bangor, and Dave Webb is now
Ulster Doc.
Ireland's a village in terms of rugby, isn't it? Really
very small.
But you must have seen a lot of changes, Tim.
Yeah, but I think it's life ebbs and flows, and I'm afraid Bective hit upon a hard times, say, in the last 6 or 8 years, haven't they? And I'm really grateful now to see that it's been reinvigorated, and there's new blood in, and there's well, it's like a changing of the guard, you know what I mean? And it happens in all institutions, and
it happens in work, it happens in families, it happens in
look at Manchester United. You know what I mean? All I'm saying is that there's swings and roundabouts, and we're on the way up now. And I know one of the questions you might want to ask me is, what do I see for the future for Bective? And that's a very difficult question, because in this day and age, it takes money to keep the show on the road, or to keep you up at the very top. And I think at the moment, because there's such a flourishing underage, and there's also now the 20s coming back, that if we're successful at what we do, I'm not sure what the right answer is to whether we go into AIL. I suppose we do, but you have to be judicious about how you use your resources and stuff like that. So I'm not sure.
Absolutely, it's difficult. It is a bit of a conundrum. Look, you have to have rugby ambition.
Yeah.
And we're a grand old dame of the rugby scene, founded in 1881.
1881, I mean, you can't get better than that.
And we got a kick in the teeth in 2018 when we got relegated and reclassed junior status. We had to reinvent ourselves, and I think we've probably done that.
I mean, somebody told me, is it 1925 we won the Bateman Cup?
Correct.
And this year we won.
100 years later, we win the AIL All-Ireland Cup, albeit the Junior Cup. But well, you can only play what's in front of you, and that was a fantastic day for this club.
But I mean, the enjoyment level out of that is just off the charts. I mean, success really does brighten the place and keep everyone happy and stuff like that. So.
And look, if you know, at the time of recording, and it's important to say that because these are pre-recorded, we have the All-Ireland Cup. I was hoping to have it sitting up here, but it's missing. We hope it's in Tiernan's house. Tiernan, we really hope it's in your house. We're top of the league with a couple of games to go, so it's in our control. Let's hope by the time this interview is published that we've closed that loop. And you know, you're right, because if we do and we happen to be successful and ultimately get back to the AIL, I was looking at it last week, there's only 2 Leinster teams in Division 2C. So if perchance we got up this year, we're on the road, we're doing a tour of Munster and Ulster, and that brings with it associated cost and more commitment from players and administrators and coaching staff. So I wouldn't quite say be careful what you wish for, because you have to have rugby and ambition, and we're all focused on we want to be a senior club again, and we think we've put the foundations in place.
That's where we should be, to be honest. But I'm just conscious of that. It has to be sort of planned for and accordingly. So. And
well, look,
a lot of better people than me.
We have strategic plans sitting in front of us there. You know, there's a lot of work going on in the background to help us build the foundations, because the last thing you want to do is go up and not have the resource or the foundations in place to be able to survive.
To some of the clubs that have gone up. So But there's enough clever people in Bective now to work.
Look, yeah, and I think you hit on it. You said there's a great buzz about the place.
Oh, no, there
now,
is, and to
and
be
the
fair,
soul and the heart is back in
the place is
Bective.
upgraded, and it looks. People are complimenting me, and I've nothing to do with it, but on how Bective looks and stuff like that. Guys who be in other rugby clubs, so it's very gratifying to hear things like that.
I think you do yourself a disservice when you say you've nothing. Tim, you poured your life into this.
Well, people are making all the decisions here about what to do and where to get the money and all that sort of thing. That's it's good. I mean, and I take my hat off to the current regime per se, because it's an enjoyable place now. And that's
it is. I mean, you have to remember, at the end of the day, we do this for crack.
Yeah.
This is a hobby.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting a bit of crack out of it, people will just drift away again, which is what happened
brings me
before.
to a second part of like Bective is a rugby club, but funnily enough, it's also a place of fun, and there's great if you want to put it, characters within the club, and it always has been, and it's always been very entertaining, and that'd be one of the things that would that'll be acutely conscious and aware of that is the thing, and that there.
The social aspect of this club is very strong. It's very important.
Absolutely, and that binds the thing too as well. It keeps the club together, and also the thing is that you'd have to say of all the clubs, maybe this is an exaggeration, but we're the most open, welcoming. Like there's no cliques per se, and you can come from anywhere or everywhere, and
doctors and dockers. Continue to say it. Yes.
And you'd learn. I mean, life from just chatting to all the different people around, so it's to everyone's benefit, really.
So you talk of characters there, Tim. What characters stick out for you? I think of everybody in here as a nickname, and they're nearly all derived from animals. You're one of the few.
Well, I
doesn't have a nickname.
Could have been in my day known as the quack or whatever. I mean, it could be anything. But I mean, obviously, there's the Dolly Dimples, and they are exceptional, and they've been completely and utterly besotted. And ferocious defenders of Bective in good and bad times, and add to the gaiety of the place. And it's entertaining to come here and to sit and listen to what they might say. I mean, it's pure enjoyment. And obviously, I played with one or two of them, like say the Badger, Paul Regan, and say Muscles. I remember playing one day with Muscles, and we were playing against Russ Cray, and it was the winners of the Provincial Towns Cup against the Metro Cup. There was a few drinks taken on the sideline, but anyway, there was one or two injuries to the Bective team, and Muscles came on and came right behind me, because I had to go from full back to centre to out half, and Muscles was the reserve scrum half, and he came on and he just might have had a drink or so. And he said,
surprisingly enough.
We were on our goal line, and we were under terrible pressure. Muscles tapped me in the shoulder. If you need any help, Tim, I'm right behind you.
That would be typical Muscles.
So,
and
we won the match.
Just to put on the record for the Dolly Dimples, and I've travelled as an honorary guest, because clearly I'm too young to be a Dolly Dimple.
Absolutely. And good looking, yeah.
Back in the day, correct, and have more than one brain cell. But I have tried numerous times. We have tried to get the Dolly Dimples to appear on Chuck's Chats, but I actually respect them a lot because they have an omerta, and it's just absolutely not, under no circumstances. Every one of them I've gone out and said no.
I might be actually kicked out now.
No. Well, yeah.
So we'll see.
Okay, so good characters and stories, Tim. Did you go on any tours? You must have been around for the tour. Did you do the Trinidad tour?
Well,
the Canada tour?
No, Canada was 1968, and Mick Cuddy was on that. And talk about characters. Mick Cuddy was Mr. Bective for 20, 30 years.
Could he train me into how to abuse referees
in
the early 90s?
Yeah. And Mick was unbelievable. But there's a famous quote. Apparently, Mick was asked on Canadian TV, like, what do you do at halftime? And Mick was the manager of the team, you see. And he said, we suck lemons. And that's you didn't talk tactics, or you didn't change your game plan or whatever else. No, we suck lemons. So that was on Canadian TV. So I think it was a big hit.
Good man, the coach.
So that was. I think Bective were the first team nearly to go abroad at that stage, and that was Canada. And then in 1976 we went to Trinidad, Tobago, and Barbados, and that was one hell of a trip. I mean, you can't make things up. And then in 1981 we went to San Francisco for 10 days, and then we went for 2 weeks to Hawaii, and again, unbelievable trips, So
Yeah, I've never been on those tours. I've been on kind of local internal tours, but it's great to hark back to the olden days when a club would go abroad on a tour, and I think it's probably something we should look at trying to bring back.
I agree with you. I know.
Like South Africa would be a great place to go to Stellenbosch.
It would, yeah, it would. But without breaking any confidence, a certain member, a Shalou member known as Shanty, but he went missing, and he was apparently in a shanty town for 3 days.
That's how he derived his nickname, down in Port of Spain, yes.
Shanty Shalou, yeah.
Well aware of that.
You know.
Any other stories you can share with us, Tim, that are clean and will pass the censor and won't libel anybody?
I could tell you some, but honestly, it's unfortunately, because I'm a medic, I'm not a
Hippocratic oath. Yes. Okay, so the future, Tim, and
the future for Bective. Well, the way I see it is that we should endeavour to be, and we are doing it this year. And you've got to say, there's Mick Sweeney, there's Emmett, there's Johnny Vaughan, there's Weewa. Like, what I'm getting at is that I always see a club where you take guys in and they progress from the 20s onto the first. And even if they only spend a year or two, you see, life has changed and the social norms are all different. I mean, when you joined a club in my day, you played for 10 or 15 years. And now people seem to play for 2 or 3 and then they're gone and they're off doing something else. I don't know what they're doing really, but they're obviously doing
kids now are going travelling. That's their thing now.
You probably know more than
I'm not a child anymore, Tim, unfortunately. I'm in your bracket.
Yeah, no. But the point I'm making is that because of my association with underage rugby teams, I always feel that we should have a strong 20s and endeavour to keep that going and hopefully feed members through from that to the first team. And that's basically it, because Bective don't really have...
We don't have the school connection. Gives us
system.
That gives
we
us a
used to
production.
have Clongowes and Roscrea and Newbridge, you know.
Well, all the good Clongowes boys stayed. You have Paul Marr, Manuel, Weewa.
Yeah.
I'm a Clongowes boy too.
Well, Kevin O'Farrell.
Kev.
Well, you're going to ask me about players. Well, Kevin O'Farrell was the forerunner of Antoine Dupont.
I would agree, and we've discussed this before.
Has modelled his game on Kevin O'Farrell. The only thing Antoine Dupont could do better, he's a better kicker from the left foot and right foot, but everything else that Antoine Dupont does, at one stage Kevin O'Farrell could do.
I remember us having a conversation at the start of the season in the bar, and you asked me the question, who does Dupont remind you of?
Yes.
And you said, and then you answered your own question and said O'Farrell, and I said,
he did,
I was more thinking of Gareth Edwards, because I used to think Kevin O'Farrell was a modern day Gareth Edwards back in the 90s.
And he was, because he'd speed off the mark, strength, and he could tackle. And
he was like a wing forward,
fantastic.
playing half back.
And he was a hell of a good player. I mean,
so you mentioned Kev. What other? I mean, you're here a long time. So what other players that you played with that you looked at stick out for you as?
Well,
as
I played
Rangers?
one game with Al Moroni, and so he was he was international standard. So but I played about 50 games with John Rayfield. So I'd have to say that. I'll go back to John Rayfield in a minute. But Ian Finnegan was a fine player. Ian Finnegan, and I'm just trying to think who else. I mean, Brendan Murphy was a fine player. I mean, there was unbelievable players. But I mean, that I played with. And then you've got players who were in the club like Harry Harbison, Phil, Lawler, Trevor. I mean,
Kurt McQuilkin was like a player coach when he played for us. I mean,
like, there was a guy on a pitch, and he always seemed to do the right thing at the right time. He never did something wrong. And obviously, as a result of that, he was a fabulous player, and obviously played, I think, 2 or 3 times for Ireland. So I mean, that's how good.
And then ended up coaching Leinster and went back home to King Country. Now he's back in Ireland. He's back in Ireland. Why is he in Greystones? Why isn't he in Bective Rangers?
Oh, well, he might be yet. But the thing about it was that I remember one match, and Cheka was I was the doctor for Leinster, you see, and Cheka was the coach. And
was he as volatile as he appeared?
Yeah, no, well, I'm going to tell you what was going on. He said, "Who the fuck missed that tackle? Who missed that tackle? Kurt, did you see?" And I saw who missed the tackle. And Kurt said, "No, didn't see." And I knew damn well if I piped up, it was the wrong thing. So I said absolutely nothing. The Leinster man who missed the tackle was never named, but it's funny. But that's what Cheika was.
Cheika was very good for Leinster, and I'm a Munster boy, right? So it kills me to say this.
I know he was.
But he gave them the bit of steel and turned them into serial folders to serial winners. I think Cheika probably doesn't get enough respect and credit for what he did. He changed Leinster. I love the opening line in Birch's autobiography. I hate Michael Cheika. Right? Because Birch was there playing for him at the time. But he did. He changed everything. I have a lot of time for Cheika. But he seems the sort of guy that can only go in for 1 or 2 years and then he bursts his bubble and people have had enough of him and he moves on again.
I mean, I honestly don't know enough to tell you the answer to that, but you're probably right, actually. Yeah.
Okay, so what keeps you coming back to Bective, Tim? What's our USP here for you? Our unique selling point? What's the difference between us and Maros?
If you go through, when you play with guys and you're under pressure at the coalface, you tend to bond. I mean, like you go through a tough match and you see a guy making a tackle and you see another guy. Whatever way it works in life, you value that guy as somebody who watch your back. So that comes into it as you go through life. And the second thing then is just the entertainment. I mean, like the Dolly Dimples and all the people around. I mean, they're guys that you have so much in common with, and there's such fun and gaiety that, I mean, it's what keeps you going at times. Like it's all inclusive. Like there's rugby element and there's, if you like, camaraderie as well. So that it's all catered for, and that's one of the great beauties of all rugby clubs, not alone Bective. I mean, every club has its own characters, and you go to any club and you'd have the same sort of carry on and outrage.
Seems to be a good vibe here, though. Well, I keep using the word soul. There's great soul in this club.
Well, yeah. It's egalitarian. It's not elitist. You know what I mean? So you just get on with it, and people take you for what you are. And I think other clubs outside appreciate us as sort of a decent club. You know?
Yeah, and an open club. And I think it's no coincidence that on the circuit of presidents' dinners, which is hard going, right? You probably need a liver transplant at the end of the season. The Bective dinner, every president in Leinster comes to the Bective dinner because they feel it's open and inclusive and welcoming. And there's a bit of crack here.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, yeah.
Okay, so we're drawing to a close. The players, I know we discussed them. Give me one best player you played with, or saw here, if you had to pick one. And remember young Jonathan outside at under 8s on the Joe Nolan teams on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, he was age 10 and you could see he had talent, and
he was savage tackler. He was a great and a tiny litlittle kid back in the day. Yeah?
I know he was.
Tiny little kid.
I know. Well, okay, for me, the best player was Jonathan Rayfield. Because he could throw the ball in, his darts were fantastic. He was great around the pitch. You could play number 8 if you wanted. But the other thing that you'd love and the club would love, he was charismatic. I mean, that guy, you'd
want to be in this place.
Well, no, you walk into a room and people would gravitate to him.
He was a good-looking guy as well.
Oh well, I mean, there was an entourage, so there was, you could
a flock of ladies.
You could feast your eyes,
Yeah.
And he was, what would I put? He was witty as well, so...
Bastard. So he was good-looking, witty, and all the ladies loved him. What chance do the rest of us have?
No, but that's the truth. But there you go. So that was my thing. I mean, there's other people...
Yeah, and then let's close it out with characters, because a place full of characters. Who epitomises Bective for you? And then there can be a few of them where you go, he's like in the Mafia, he's a good fella.
Well,
he's
do you remember
a ranger.
Phil Murphy?
Yeah, all the lads played well with the wine guns and cheating on the touchline.
Yeah.
He trained me into how to cheat on the touchline back in the 90s.
Yeah, well, so you got Phil Murphy. I always thought Dermot Jordan was the ultimate gentleman.
Yes, 1969, I think Dermot joined.
Joined Bective. Yeah. Okay, well, no, so it just goes to show you. And there was someone else I was just trying to think of.
And he's still here. And the night
John Arrigo.
John Arrigo.
He was a real gentleman, but a very good rugby player as well. I mean, tough as nuts, but other than that, an absolute gentleman. So he was a lovely man. I have a great time for Greg Barry. Now, I don't know if you remember Greg Barry, but he was there in my time.
Before my time.
Before your time, yeah. So they're all... but if you want, for the person that I would most value in Bective was Jerry Quinn, or is Jerry Quinn.
Is Jerry Quinn, yeah. The cop from Roscommon.
Yeah.
A great story. I'm name dropping here now. Watch out for the bounce.
Right.
Mick Galway.
Yeah.
I was up in the house a few weeks ago, and he did a piece to camera for me for a shout out before the All Ireland Cup final.
Okay.
And as he finished that, he went, "What's the name of the cop? The red-haired cop from the west of Ireland used to be on the door when myself and Danzer and Mickey Brads would have training on a Sunday morning for the Ireland team, and we'd come up after our matches on Saturday and we'd come into Bective and we'd have a gaggle of pints and he'd leave us in." I said, "Jerry Quinn," and he went, "Jerry Quinn." He said, "If you see him again, tell him I was asking for him."
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, isn't that a great story? Yeah. So why Jerry for you?
Well, because Jerry did unbelievable amount of work behind the scenes in Bective. Like you'd see him painting the clubhouse in the middle of the summer, and he'd be concreting, and he'd be like the upkeep of Bective, and he would sort of be aware and keeping an eye on what's going on in Bective all the time, and would be, if you like, the ultimate guy who never asked for any recognition for what he was at, and yet did it. And
Correct.
You couldn't but admire that.
Yeah, he was a great man, and I thought it was great. He was honoured with being president of the club.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can remember back in the days when I was a crazy kid in here, and we were doing the discos on Saturday nights, and Jerry be out of the door with all the other bouncers, and the nonsense, and we'd get away with it because we were Rangers.
Yeah.
Right? He was nearly like your uncle or your dad.
Yeah.
Who'd give you a clip around the ear if you stepped out of line. Yeah. But ultimately, he was nearly minding you, and he pulled in. Like those discos funded this club all the way through the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, they were gold mines. I mean, the trip to the West Indies, to Trinidad and Tobago, I mean, they were funded by extra dancers, and there was no problem then. You could have with licensing or anything like that. And my God, but it defrayed the cost of the trip. So essentially, it made it doable to everybody that went on it. And I mean, like that memory is forever. You can't gloss over that. And all of those things. And Bective as such, I know probably that'll never. I don't know. Would you think it'll ever come again in the future?
I'd love to see the dances coming back, but
the dances probably never will.
Yeah,
but I'm just thinking trips.
I think it's hard to fund something like that, and the cost would probably. Yeah. But I've often thought about, geez, you go down to Cape Town or Stellenbosch, do 10 days, play 2 matches, drink the country dry, and come home, and you have memories for life. Yes?
I might go with you if you're going.
Yeah, well, let's see. We'll put it to the executive.
I know, yeah. I know, well, fair enough, yeah. So, it's true. And I have to be honest, like, the enjoyment I would have got out of Bective greatly outweighs any sort of effort that I've put in. Do you know what I mean? And
I think you might be doing yourself a disservice.
But it'd be a lot of people. It would be similar. I mean, like you'd have to mention the amount of work that Frankie Smith did, and people like Gaza. They were all sort of. For the good of Bective, like and Jerry Lawless, the footwork.
All the guys behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, like trying to.
You have the likes of Steve Rattigan now.
Yes,
Rats doing everything. Nobody even knows who he is.
No. And
except the team know who he is.
He's there
all the time, doing everything. Manuel as well.
Yeah.
There's a whole load of people. Look, I was talking to Declan Lawler recently. I was saying we all have a talent in terms of whether it's your professional career as a doctor, an accountant, or a lawyer. Or just everybody has something to give here, and it's just finding out what somebody can do for the club. Yeah. And none of us are getting paid; we're all doing it for the crack. Yeah. Bit of enjoyment.
That's true.
Bit of enjoyment.
No, I agree with you. So, as I say, the amount of pleasure I would have derived from Bective greatly outweighs anything else that I've ever done. So
long way to continue.
Agree.
Don't go anywhere yet. We're going back to the big time. We hope.
Yeah, well, that's true.
We hope. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tim. Lovely to talk to you.
A pleasure.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, sure. We shall see now. You can.
That's a wrap.
Yeah, no.